Hey, what's up, everybody? So, for the past 20 minutes or so, I've been trying to make a video about a topic that seems pretty reasonable. But this is the only time at this job where I've attempted to make a video 4 times and have been interrupted each time. So, maybe it's not meant for me to make this video. Maybe not. But I'm not about to say anything bad or disrespectful or bring forth any super deep topic that one would think the universe would try to keep me from having a conversation about. But nevertheless, I'm going to attempt to do this again. So anyway, there's a young fella at my job here, a co-guard that I work with, about 20 years of age. That's like 16 years younger than me, um, who wants to be a police officer really, really bad. And in this era, it's very difficult to, as a black person, to really see the police profession as anything other than something that's against the movement at this moment, just because of how things are. But I'm smart enough to see past that, and I'm also smart enough to understand that if they're going to do some type of police reform, you're going to need some brand new, fresh group of young, wily, wide-eyed cops who are going to be looking to be trained and looking to be very, very passionate and in love with the profession. Not guys who are half-assing it, and certainly not people who oppose it. So you need these type of individuals. This young fella right here, you need him to be your next crop of cops, and he needs to be trained with the new form of training, whatever's coming with reform, however. He's the generation of individuals, 20 years old. By the time things come around, he'll be 23, 25 years old, going into the police force. Hopefully, if things go the way they're supposed to, we'll see the changes necessary in the training and certain laws that will make it so that the profession is a bit more humane and controlled in regards to how they treat others. So it's a perfect storm for this young fella in regards to what he wants to do, the type of position it is right now versus the type of position it's going to be when he gets there. So it's a little tricky. He's gung-ho for the Blue Lives Matter thing because in his mind there's no difference between showing respect for Black Lives Matter and showing respect for Blue Lives Matter, and on its surface it makes all the sense in the world. You need a lot of details, you need to understand a lot of history, and then you have to be, dare I say, either super compassionate about one side or another, or just flat out a part of one side or another, in order for it to really even matter to you. You know, it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, I can convince you of why I don't support, but then you will look at me and say, well, it's clearly you don't support because, first of all, you're a black person, and you have a certain point of view. So him being not a black person and not a white person at all is either. I wouldn't expect him to have a horse in this race per se, unless he just happens to be one of those humanitarian, compassionate individuals. Without information and without that trait, I really don't think you're going to care, even if you do know the history. But without the history, there's certainly no reason for you to side with the side that I happen to find myself on. But when I also think about the side I'm on, I think about not just protesting an issue, more so providing and devising solutions. My thinking doesn't stop with I'm upset or I'm offended. I'm upset, I'm offended, and this is what I think needs to be in place. This is the type of planning I think is necessary. This is the plan, etc. And the plan for me is, in my mind, well, we can't do away with police entirely, no matter the origin of it, because we are still in need of enforcement. So unless we're going to police the streets ourselves, which regular everyday citizens are just not trained to do, we need some type of trained professional in positions to kind of answer the call and address these different circumstances that just flat out aren't safe for us to handle and that we're not trained to handle. So you need guys like this individual. You need youngsters who are excited about being police officers, even though this era will give everyone every reason not to be. If we're going to have enforcement, we're going to need people to enforce. And you don't want people who hate the position or who have some ulterior motives getting involved. We have enough corruption as is. You need real, genuine people who are in love with the position or are looking forward to being enforcers of the new generation. So, what do you do? What do you do if you're me? You know, you want to help this young fella. You want to put him in a position to believe that he's going to be a good cop because you believe he's going to be a good cop. You believe that he can be one of the good ones, and you believe that you're in a position to catch him in his life early enough to where you can have some small influence on how he views people that look like you, and maybe some small influence on how he views the position itself. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be both supportive of his dream and directly in tune with what's going on out there, which is two very, very conflicting things, unfortunately. So that's what I came here to say, man. As the Lord would have it, because stuff like this happens to me all the time, while we're in the midst of this huge anti-police rally, whatever this is that you call this moment, the Lord will put it in my life to be directly in contact with a youngster that wants to be a blue life, that desperately dreams of being the greatest cop he can be. And I know how that feels, to dream of something, to want it really badly, and to have people around you who either support you or don't. And he came to me with the circumstance basically saying that his significant other, his lady, didn't support his position, and more so siding with Black Lives Matter, and it creates some turmoil in his life, in his relationship, because of his positioning with the Blue Lives Matter and her disrespecting it. And he was telling me this, and you know, it's rough because, like, if he saw my Instagram, he'd probably hate me. Like, if he saw some of the stuff that I put up, he would understand that I'm Black Lives Matter and I don't know what a blue life really is. But at the same time, it's like, my mother was a police officer. You know what I mean? Like, if somebody would have went upside my mother's head and killed her because she was a cop in the 70s, know me to sit here and say this to you. What does that mean? Who knows? Maybe nothing. Who am I, right? But the point is, for whatever position I have, if it weren't for the grace of a cop surviving her tenure as a police officer, I wouldn't be. So, period. There would be no me. So, there's balance to my position, even in its passion. I know that there are good cops out there. Unfortunately, good cops are ones that are protecting bad ones. And it's the culture of bad policing that ultimately needs to go. So it's a very, very difficult position to try to explain to someone like this individual who may not have all the information necessary to kind of make all of that make sense. If I'm to sit here and say, oh, the cops come from overseers who no longer had positions after slaves were freed, so the masters gave these overseers positions to continue doing what they were doing, to oversee African Americans who were newly freed, but they still wanted to keep a foot on their necks. That's exactly what police are. That's the original origin of police in this country. How do I explain that to him? You know what I mean? How do I say I don't support today's understanding of police officers because of the origin? Like, what does that mean to a young fellow, right? Or, yeah, there's been a lot of African Americans killed. All he's going to tell me is there's been a lot of cops treated poorly because of it. And I can't deny that because it's actual fact. The reality is the scales, as I always say in regards to these type of conversations, the scales have to matter. And what the scales are is how much has already happened. When you sit there and you look for balance and you look for fairness, if you're not taking into account the score, then the balance that you're looking for is going to be skewed. It's going to be tilted, assuming that the score is 0-0 to start the game. When you're talking about cops versus African Americans, the score is not 0-0 to start the game. When you're talking about whites versus blacks in this country, or whites versus reds in this country, so to speak, Native Americans, the score wasn't even to start the game. You know what I mean? The score starts with the injustices versus the pain that was taken on from being on the wrong end of those injustices. And to make it so that someone understands that clearly, you need to have a lot of history shared. They have to be interested in that. They have to be willing to hear that. They have to be open-minded to believing your position, to trusting your sources. It's just a long, very, 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 very complex conversation to be having with somebody who's only 20 years of age, who ultimately just wants to be a good cop. So my position as the big brother around here in this regard is to just try to lead him in a position to get what he wants, instill and breathe life into the young fella, let him know that you believe in him, and to continue to plant the seeds that things are not as they seem. And when you get there, you got to keep your moral compass on and sharp. And that's really all I know how to do. I don't want to sit here and say, yo, I don't agree with this because of this, when that's not the truth. The reality is my opinion is very, very, very nuanced. My opinion is very, very fluid. But it's case by case in some cases, and in other cases it's sharp and straight down the middle. And I think when it comes to the position of, do I want to send someone that I know toward the police in terms of being an officer, the answer is sure, if you're passionate about it. If you're serious about being a good cop, then yes, I want you to go take the place of a bad one. Take that guy's job. That dude who's kneeling on that guy's neck, yeah, he no longer deserves the badge. My homeboy does, who desperately wants to be a cop, who doesn't have anything but innocence behind him because he's only 20 years of age. He should be a cop. That's who should have his badge. So I'm not necessarily the guy that says defund the police, because if you take the funding away from the position and then replace all the bad cops with good cops, now you have a bunch of good cops with no funding. You see what I'm saying? That's what goes down there. And I've heard good conversations from more informed individuals about the importance of police unions and why corruption is seemingly upheld because of these unions. I've listened to parts of that type of conversation. I don't know enough to really say more than that. I'll just say that I hear people when they say that. I may not necessarily know enough to know how to fix this, but I do know if we deteriorate the position, it's not going to make it a better position. If you bring down the value of the job itself, you're not going to get good people in there. And that's what we need to be really, 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 really clear about. Defunding, and I may have said this in another video, but I don't know if I uploaded it, so I'll say it here. Defunding only makes sense if you don't see a way to cleanse the position of the corruption. Because then at that point, you're just looking to dissolve the position, make it so very, very uncomfortable for bad cops to continue wanting to be cops. See, that's why defunding would work. That's what it would work for, is what I'm trying to say. If you can't cleanse the bad ones out of there, then you just make it so that all the perks of being a cop and all the stuff that they need to do their job correctly just isn't available to them, and no one's going to want to be a cop because you're not protected. But that's not a solution. And that's the type of thinking that we need to get around from. It's almost like, and I know this is a very, very different conversation, but I made a video for it. Same logic applies. If I say that I'm going to kill any pedophile that I see, and that we should just give them capital punishment immediately, it does nothing for making them turn away from the actions that they do. All it does is drive them into a corner and make it so that their help is not available to them. Yes, you can eradicate all the ones you see, but the ones you don't see are going to be in the shadows, and they're not going to come out because you're going around killing everyone that you see. So what you need to do is create a safe space for these sickos to come out, tell you what they're doing, and then you'll find a very, very positive, smart and strategic way to remove them from children. But you can't do that when they're in the shadows. You can't do that when they're sitting back, hiding, pretending like they don't have the issue that they have to keep from dying, to keep from being slaughtered. It may make you feel better to kill every pedo, but it ain't gonna bring the ones out that you need to see emerge so that you can stop this problem across the board rather than just killing everybody you find. In other words, you're trying to punish everybody who's already done harm, but it does nothing for the future. It does nothing for protecting children. It does nothing for making sure that these people are not in positions to harm anymore. So, same goes with the police in regards to this situation. If you remove all the funding, you're just going to continue to have bad cops running around with no funding. They're not going to walk away from their positions because they have a bloodthirst, they're crazy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You want to get those people away from that position You want that position to be as rich as humanly possible so that good people will take the time to get in there, learn the extensive training, learn what they need to learn, and then put their lives on the line to police our streets. That's what I believe is the solution, and preferably make it so that as many of those people are as young as possible in terms of like 18 to 25 years of age. That way they're not already corrupt. That way they're not already caught up in the old ways of doing things. They just immediately hop in and be quick to learn. So that's my point of view, man. That is my full point of view. And, you know, that's what it is. So when I say that I don't, like if you look on my Instagram page and you see something that's anti-Blue Lives Matter, the anti part is the part that has communication with those who directly use the spirit of the police to oppose justice in this country. Those who back Blue Lives Matter to oppose justice in the Black Lives Matter movement. That's what you see in there. That doesn't mean that I don't believe good cops exist. That doesn't mean that I don't love my mom or my uncle who's also a police officer. That doesn't mean that I think that the young fella that is dreaming of becoming a police officer shouldn't have an opportunity at his dream or should ignore his calling or something like that. And I think that's what we need to get around having conversations about. If we're looking at a problem and if we're intelligent enough to see different angles, then there should be a way to express how we feel without being boxed into a corner where we only see things one way, or assume that my position is like the next person's position just because I follow them with what it is that I post. You know, my thinking and my terms of solutions and things that I believe in, they're detailed. You know, a lot of times my opinions have a lot of different angles. It's just how my brain works. So I think this reminds me, and hopefully you, in hearing me speak, of the importance of communicating with people. Granted, a good portion of us are just sheep, and we're just regurgitating the stuff that's being told to us. But there are some of us who do our homework, who take things apart, who can see different angles, who can make a stance but still see the nuances and the positivity of that same subject. And that's pretty much what I gotta say there. So I'm rooting for the young fella. I hope he becomes a police officer. I hope he's able to do the greatest job he can, have a great career. But at the same time, I'm Black Lives Matter, bro. And it's not about no funding, money stuff, no, it's just a spirit of hating seeing your very own people continue to be brushed aside when they stand up for themselves. That's what it's about. Continue to be silenced when they stand up for themselves. Tired of that. I think most black people are tired of that. And I think that that's where most of the energy is. And two, the subject of the police obviously is cut and dry in regards to police brutality. We have plenty enough information to know that bad cops exist and that a bad system is in place to protect those bad cops, and a change is needed, and that there's some bad training going on out there. And all of this stuff is very, very clear if you're able to see it. So I don't think I'm wrong in my position at all. But ultimately, I want the cops to be better. I don't want them to be necessarily gone, just better. And it would be nice if we could get rid of the origin of overseer somehow, or make it common knowledge. Maybe if they pay some homage to what it is their original nature is, that might go a long way in creating some type of trust within the communities that they often find themselves in. Accountability is important everywhere, even with us. And I don't lose sight of that either. Thank you guys for watching. My name is BDF. I'm out.